and gentlemen. My name is Anita Narula, and I serve as the Director of Operations with United Healthcare. I also have the privilege of serving as a board member with the US-India Chamber of Commerce, DFW, and it is my distinct privilege to introduce today's keynote speaker, Ms. Mona Sharif. Mona Sharif is a Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer for NTT Data. She has more than 20 years of operational and leadership experience supporting sales and growth objectives of Fortune 100 companies, including Dell, Hewlett-Packard, Lucent Technologies, and EDS. She has an extensive and impressive bio, which you can find in the program, but I'd like to highlight of just a few things. She served as the co-chair of WISE, Employee Resource Group, an organization dedicated to the acquisition, retention, and development of female talent. And as a long-time advocate for women business, Mona was interviewed in 2015 on CNN's International's World Business Today about Dell Women Entrepreneur Network. Mona earned a bachelor's degree in journalism and a Master of Business Administration from University of Texas. She also completed executive development programs at Thunderbird, Wharton, and Cornell. Mona is fluent in Arabic and lives in our neighborhood in Dallas, Texas, with her husband and 2 teenage children. Please join me in welcoming Mona Sharif to the stage. And also joining Mona on the stage for this keynote conversation, we have our chamber president, none other than Neil Gonaguntla. Most of us know Neil, but for those who don't, Neil is an attorney by training and is licensed to practice as a corporate attorney in the state of Texas. As a JD MBA, she runs startups and manages multi-million-dollar accounts and companies. She currently serves as the president of US-India Chamber.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you for the introduction.
All right, well, I think you're going to have to hear from me for quite a while today. So apologies in advance. But I am absolutely delighted to have the opportunity to sit down with you for this keynote conversation. And we really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
So, Mona, everybody here has had the opportunity to see your bio, either through your LinkedIn profile or in this program. And everybody knows that you're the Chief Marketing Officer of NTT Data, the largest technology services company out of Japan. And is this a role that you aspire to from the very beginning? I mean, how do you become the CMO?
Yeah, no. Probably not. So let me tell you just a little bit about NTT Data for those of you who may not be as familiar with the company. It's probably the biggest company you've never heard of. NTT Data is about a $16 billion business. It's one of the top 10 IT services firms in the world. And we've got 100,000 employees in 50 countries. We're part of something called NTT Group, which is based out of Japan, and it's very similar to our AT&T. That's how it got its roots, that's how it's got its start, but obviously it's expanded into multiple businesses, including IT services, which we're part of. When I started my journey, probably universities where I started my journey, Anita mentioned that I got a journalism degree. And that was because I was sure I was going to be the next Barbara Walters. Now, how many of you know who Barbara Walters was? That was me. I was going to be the next Barbara Walters. And so I went to journalism school. And she had a great professor who also told me to take some PR classes in case the network TV thing didn't work out. So glad he did that. And so when I graduated, I hadn't yet lost that dream. I still thought journalism was going to be the place. And so I went to work for WFAA, Channel 8, the ABC affiliate. And I did that in the mornings. And they didn't pay well at all. So in the afternoon, I worked for an advertising agency doing PR. So I had two jobs, mostly afternoon into the night. Turned out to be like 15-hour days. It's nuts. But I did that for a while, and then I truly found when I was working for the agency that PR and communications seemed to be kind of a passion for me, and so I went into that field, and I'm so glad I did. I joined EDS, and that's a really long story for another day, but I joined EDS in '92 and kind of became known as somebody who could just get things done. And if it was really complicated and really hard and nobody else would volunteer for it, they'd go, well, you try it. You know, okay. So I took on these crazy tasks and got this reputation as somebody who could make things happen. And early in my EDS career, I did realize that ultimately I wanted to be a CMO. And I had no marketing background, no marketing degree, hadn't even taken a marketing class, and realized I probably needed an MBA to do that. So I was working full-time at EDS from 8 to 5:30, and then I'd drive to UT Dallas, change out of my pantyhose and my skirt, both of which were mandatory at the time that I was there, into jeans, and I'd go to class from 6 to 10, and I did that for a couple of years until I got my MBA. And Lucent Technologies recruited me out of B school. And I was there for about a year, and during that year, the EDS guys just hard time recruited me back. And so they just finally wore me down, and I joined back to EDS, and this was around 98, 99. And about a decade later, 99, closer to year 2000. And about a decade later, HP bought EDS, and I became a vice president of marketing at HP, ultimately. And about 4 years later, somebody I had worked with early in my career at EDS, who was now at Dell, recruited me to join Dell. And it was perfect timing for me to leave HP. Grueling, crazy travel, and it was a really hard time. So it was a perfect opportunity to move to Dell. And then, so I was running marketing communications for Dell Services, and in November, we consummated the deal with NTT Data, where NTT Data bought the Dell Services division out of Dell. And I became the CMO for NTT Data then. And no, when I joined, when I went to UT in the first place, I never imagined that I'd end up in marketing. I certainly never thought I'd be in technology, not an industry that spoke to me as a child. And I never thought I'd be working for a Japanese firm, but I'm glad things worked out the way they did, but it wasn't part of my original plan.
So you are married and you have 2 children.
Yes.
Have you always been a career first kind of a woman?
Oh, she says yes. My mom's here. I don't know. Yes and no. So I played work when I was growing up. I had Barbie dolls, and it wasn't like, underprivileged. I mean, I had things, but I didn't like those things. I liked to play office, and I was very good at playing office. I could coordinate my older sister and all the other kids, and they were my employees, and I would tell them what to do, and it was so much fun. So good at it. And I love to play work. And I've had a job since I was 12 years old. I mean, I do enjoy making my own money. I like being, independent, and I do like to work. But then life happens, I met this guy on the beach, we fell in love, a year later went back and got married back home. I mean, I met him in Lebanon, went back home, got married, and then he came here, and by this time I got married around 26, and about 4 years later, my father, who's a pediatrician, said, you're overweight, and you have to have your first child before you're 30, or you'll be pre-diabetic. He basically scared me into it. It was the best thing he could have ever done, because otherwise I probably would have never had kids. So I had my first, and then I had my second, and I wish I had 4 or 5 more, but I had to stop. But yes and no. I mean, I love to work, and I love to be a mom. I love to be a daughter. I love to be a wife most days.
So how did you manage your career? Did you have support along the way?
Oh my gosh, so much support. I mean, really, first and foremost, my parents. There's no way I could have done anything. Gone to school, you know, been able to work 2 jobs, one of which paid so little that I, you know, stayed at home. You know, so much love and support, and you can do anything, even though she was very traditional. You can do anything, you can do anything. So lots of encouragement, lots of support from my family, lots of support from my husband, lots of support from my team. I've always just been so blessed to have great teams. I have a great team now. Where's Anna? Anna Asava. Anna was one of my first employees very early in my EDS career. And she always told me what to do. It was fabulous because I was so lost as a manager, as a young new manager. And she would be very diplomatic and say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about doing that? And I was like, I hadn't. And so I've been blessed with great teams. And I've had some terrible managers who I've learned a lot of what not to do from. But I've had some great leaders along the way. And it was funny when you and I were talking, and you said, you know, think about some of the leaders who shaped your career. A couple of them were Indian men, and this one, early in my EDS career, a man named Abbas Rizavi, we called him Riz, God rest his soul. He passed away way too young, but Riz was one of my leaders, and he sat me down. I was not even married yet, so I was under 25. He sat me down and said, "What do you want? Where do you want to be when you retire?" And I was like, okay, I'm thinking about what do I want to do this weekend, and you want me to be thinking about what I'm going to do when I'm retiring. Like I couldn't even think that far. But he forced the discipline. He said, let's grab a piece of paper and a pencil. I'm like, are you kidding me? A pencil? And it was brilliant because you want to be able to make changes. You want to make changes as you think through it. But if you go back to it and review it, you want to make changes. So I created at the tender age of 25 where I wanted to be at 65, and you know, he kind of helped me think through for each decade. Imagine thinking in decades, like for each decade, what do you need to accomplish in order to ultimately become a CMO? And that's really when I realized that that's what I wanted to do. That's what I wanted to be when I retired. And now that I'm 47, I guess I got to rethink my plan. I'll rethink it when Thanksgiving. Every Thanksgiving, I pull out my plan, and I either make a new one because everything has changed so much, or I just take out an eraser and change it a little bit. But every Thanksgiving I do that because I'm thankful for my blessings, and that's one of my blessings. And so I kind of think through it. And the great thing about doing that is it really forces the discipline of, okay, for the next 18 months, what do I need to do? Like short-term goals, but then long-term. What does that ultimate destination look like? And what I've found as I've encouraged younger employees and mentees to go through this kind of exercise is most people spend more time planning their summer vacation than they do their ultimate destination, their life destination. And I just think that's nuts. Like, spend a little time thinking about your life. And, you know, and also think about personal goals you want to accomplish. Like, you know, every year, lose 40 pounds is on my list. Every year I don't. But, you know, have personal goals. Like, you know, now it's going to be learn Japanese. You know, I probably should learn a few Japanese terms. So every time I revisit it, there's short-term goals, there's long-term goals, and it's in pencil, so I can give myself flexibility to have not lost those 40 pounds.
So we have people here who are at varying places in their career, different ages. We've got people who are just starting out. We have people who are maybe nearing the end of their professional life or their entrepreneurial life, but you know, have a lot of years left in that. So this is something that anybody could do.
Anybody could do. Like if you're 60 and you want to retire 5 years from now, what do the next 5 years look like? Where do you want to travel? Where do you want to? What skills do you want to learn? You know, where do you want to volunteer? You know, you just go through the discipline of thinking about your life consciously.
That's a great tip.
Thanks, Chris.
You're a huge fan of Sheryl Sandberg.
I am. I'm a big, big fan.
And her philosophy that women should learn.
Yeah. And another book, maybe it was a little controversial at the time. How many have actually read the book, the Lean In book? Just a few. I very strongly recommend this book. And I know it's got a lot of flack, but I think it's probably for people who haven't gone through the effort of reading it. So what Lean In talks about, the ultimate kind of can I use the word nirvana in this audience? Is that okay? Nirvana is this world where women run half of our corporations and our countries, and men run half of our homes. And that equilibrium of the world being a better place when we have that kind of balance in it is kind of the overall philosophy of the book. And then, she talks about key things like conditions for women improve when there are more women in leadership positions. And studies have proven this time and again in countries where you have female leaders, in companies where you have female leaders. Conditions improve not just for women, conditions improve for everyone because of the types of investments women are willing to make in education and in communities. So that's kind of the first premise of the book, the conditions improve. The second premise, and this is very concerning to me as a woman in a corporation, and I see it day in and day out, and it's that women have to prove themselves over and over again in every single role, and women are promoted based on accomplishment. I've done these 10 things, so now you know I can do those 10 things again, versus the same candidate, a male candidate for the same role has done these 4 things, so we believe that he's got the potential to do these next 6 things, so we'll give him the job that has those 10 requirements. And I see it play out over and over again. Maybe some of us saw it play out in the elections, but I won't go political on you. Women just have to prove themselves, and we have to do it over and over, and we have to have accomplished so much before we're given a chance to accomplish the next step.
I think one of the things that she talks about a lot, and I know you have some thoughts on this, is that oftentimes we struggle with our own internal and external.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We've got to, as a society, remove barriers, but we also have to, as women, remove all the self-doubt and the fear, the fear of failing, the fear of not doing a good job, which she calls the holy trinity of fear, the fear of not being a good wife or a good mother or a good daughter. We have all these fears, but also as a society expects women to be nurturing. Society has issues with women who are successful or who are accomplished or who are in power. And we have to get to the point where we are comfortable with women being aggressive and successful. Very, very early in my kids' development, when anyone called my daughter bossy, I would ask them please not to use the words that they would not use to describe my son. I said, please, she has executive leadership capabilities, and we are refining those capabilities and skills, and we encourage those skills. And so I wouldn't let anybody place a label on her that I wouldn't place on my son. Nobody would call my son bossy. Why are they calling my daughter bossy? And we use very gender-neutral language in the home. Like, you couldn't call somebody a fireman or a policeman. They were firefighters. They were police officers. And Dahlia could do it as much as Jad could do it. And I encouraged both of them to use that kind of language and for her to believe that she could do whatever her brother could do.
So one of the other discussion items there is the topic of nurturing and this need for women to be nurtured.
Yeah. And how uncomfortable we are when we think a woman might not be nice or might not be nurturing. So specifically, where do you want to go with it?
So, talk about, is there a time when you felt like you needed to be nurturing, but you couldn't for whatever reason?
Like every day. So, very early in my EDS, it was when I went back to EDS because I just had my first baby, and they recruited me back when I was 4 months pregnant, which wore me down. And I went back and I just had my baby. Were you working with me at the time, Anna? Was that later? You were, okay. So I had just had my first baby, and I was out on maternity leave. And the company had rolled out this program. Anita talked about the Thunderbird training that I did. The company rolled out this program where they were sending the up-and-coming executives to Thunderbird for 2 or 3 weeks. I can't remember, 3 weeks. And I was on maternity leave. And so my name wasn't on the list. And my boss saw the list, and it was a Malaysian man. And he said, why is it on the list? And I said, well, she's on mat leave. And he said, oh, no, no, we need to call her. So he called me, and he said, there's this Thunderbird program. I know you're on mat leave. What do you want to do? And I said, well, ask him if I could take the baby. And he said, well, nobody's ever done that. And I said, okay, ask him if I could take the baby. And so he went back and asked if I could take my baby. And my husband was thankfully flexible enough to come with us then too. And so we did. So we all went to Thunderbird. And I got to do the classes and leave every 2 hours because I nursed for the first year. Thank God for the pump. You know, I would go back and forth from Thunderbird classes to nursing my baby and back, and you know, the company had to make some accommodations. Thunderbird had to make some accommodations. Nobody died, you know, so it's okay, and that was good. But it's, I mean, every day, you know, these jobs are hard, and you're like climbing mountains, and you're fighting off ninjas. You know how these corporate people are, and you're like, oh, what happened? Where did that come from? You're fighting off these ninjas, you're slaying dragons, and then you go home, and your daughter needs help with her physics, and your son needs a hug, and your husband, you know what your husband wants. And you're like, I'm tired, and I'm a little bit angry, and I just, can I not do that right now? And so it's a daily thing where you expect to be nurtured. My mother calls, what did you make for dinner? Nothing, nothing, pains.
I know when you and I had a chance to talk a while back, we shared a conversation around an article that was published in The Atlantic in December of 2016. And the article was very interesting. It highlighted the journey of a group of sorority sisters out of Northwestern University, all of whom were highly accomplished. And it followed their journey 10 years out to see what they were doing 10 years later. And what they found is that several of these women had either dropped out of the workforce entirely, and these were, mind you, honors society women in their university, highly professionally accomplished as they were coming out. And about a third of them had dropped out of the workforce altogether. This is 10 years in. And some of them, and they were called the opt-outers. And then there was a second group, another about 30%, who were the scaled backers, meaning they either chose to stay in positions where they didn't necessarily advance or didn't have to travel or whatever. They chose to scale back. And then there was the minority of women who actually continued to pursue their roles. And I wondered if there was ever a time when you scaled back.
Yeah, actually, remember when I talked about HP bought EDS, and I was there for about 4 years, and it was a grudge, and then Dell called, and I moved over to Dell. Those 4 years were probably the hardest 4 years of my career, the worst 4 years of my career. It wasn't that it was hard, it wasn't that the work was hard, it was that the company was based in California, and they expected us to be in California most weeks. And so, you know, I'd fly out on Monday, I'd fly back on Thursday or Friday. I was exhausted. I was on the road 80% of the time. If it wasn't California, it was Barcelona or it was Asia, and it sounds like fun, but it wasn't. It was a gruel, and it was awful. And it got to the point where at the time, Dalia was 10, 11, and she sat me down and she said, "Mom, we don't recognize you anymore. You're always stressed out. Even when you're home, you're not really here. Like your head's somewhere else, and we're going to divorce you. Like the whole family is going to. Even Teta and Jindu, my parents. Even Teta and Jindu, and we're all going to divorce you." And I was like, "Okay, that's not good." And I had strep throat because I was always sick. Because I was always so tired. I went to my mom's house, and I'm like, "Mom, I'm tired. I'm sick." And my cell phone rang, and it was somebody I had worked for back at EDS. And he called and said, "Are you happy, or would you like a change?" And I said, "I am not, and I would." And basically, it was a little bit more money, actually, but it was like half the size team, and it was Austin instead of California, so a little bit of travel, less travel, and closer. And, you know, a very kind of smaller scope. And that scared me. I was like, oh my God, what's that going to do to my career if I take a smaller scope? I mean, it's going to be debilitating to my career. And I sat my kids down and my husband, and I said, okay, guys, here's the deal. It's like going from marketing for a $25 billion company to marketing for a $9 billion company. It's not even $10 billion, it's so small. And the teams, you know, from 250 people to 100 people. And I went through, and Chad, my son, said, what about the money? And I said, it's a little more money. And he said, okay, so let me make sure I understand this. It's more money for less work, and what's the question? I was like, you're right. What is the question? It turned out to be the best decision that I was fortunate enough to be able to make. Many women can't make these types of choices in their lives, and I was blessed and fortunate once again to be able to scale back, and it turned out to be a great thing to do.
Well, one thing I found absolutely fascinating when we first got to meet is I asked you the question, what are your thoughts on power and ambition?
You told me the name of
right.
the program. You said it's Power Refined, and I said, oh, I am so uncomfortable with that. And you were.
I was shocked.
You were shocked. You were like, you're what? I said, it was 2 weeks ago, and I haven't slept since then. Thank you so much. Really, I went into like this whole personal crisis of what is my problem with these words together. You know, all my refined I'm good with. Like refined, you know, 47 years in, I have the perfect role model of what refined looks like. I know what refined is, and I aspire to be that. But I get that picture. Power, I had so much trouble with, and I really had to think about why I had so many issues with that word. And it turns out I'm not alone. It turns out society in general has, you know, I did so much research on this. What is my problem? And as a society, we just struggle with that label being put on women. But we don't have a problem when a man is described as powerful or successful or ambitious. You know, these are good words to describe men, but we get a little uncomfortable with them being used to describe women. And one of the interesting things I came across was this Harvard Business Review case study. How many of you have heard about the Howard and Heidi case study, where they took a story of an entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur, and all they did was change out the name. The story was exactly the same, totally identical, no change. And they gave it to their Harvard MBA students. And they said, tell us what you think of this entrepreneur. And when it was Howard, he was smart, and he was ambitious, and he was successful, and they liked him. And when it was Heidi, it was not somebody you wanted to work for. And I mean, it was like they just couldn't like her. And unfortunately, as you see this play out in corporate America, maybe the politics, you see it play out where we expect women to be nice, we expect them to be nurturing, we don't expect them to be successful. And so I went through this whole crisis of, okay, so what does power mean? Is power best when it's private? When like the hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world? Like, is a mother's power or the parent's power the most important power? Or like those Liberian women who went on a sex strike. They refused sex to their husbands until they stopped a war. Like, wow, that's like private power, collective power, but private power. Or is it best when it's individual power, like in a corporate environment, when I can promote and do promote other women, or get them things I know they need, like parking for the expectant mothers, or push for their rights, or is it best when it is a collective power of women, like the Women's March on Washington, or like the way women pressured their companies to stop advertising on that O'Reilly show in the wake of the scandal. And then I realized it's really all three of those things. And I needed to get past my own barriers with the word power. And as a woman, I need to embrace it. We all need to embrace how we're both refining and also defining the term and embrace it.
So
I'm over it. So two weeks later, I'm over it.
Good, I'm glad. We have Congresswoman Johnson here, and she is the author of over 150 bills which have been signed into law. And I have to ask you about equal pay. I mean, here you are, Chief Marketing Officer of NTT Data, and I want to know what your thoughts are on equal pay.
And I'll tell you, I am really, really good at making sure if I hire a woman, I'm paying her exactly as much as if I were hiring a man. And I'm great at coaching women. Like every person who comes to me says, how do I negotiate this raise? I'm like, here's how you do it. And I'm really good at that. And when it came time for me to do it myself, do you think I did a good job? Time after time, I did not. I did not, and I couldn't advocate for myself. Like I couldn't do that. I can advocate for others, great, but for me, I found it very difficult. And when NTT Data bought Dell Services, my boss, another Indian man, Suresh Vaswani, pulled me in his office and said, "What they offer you?" And I said, "They're gonna make me a vice president like I am today, and they're gonna bring me over at my salary." And he said, "Oh no, you cannot accept that." And I said, "I'm just so glad I have a job. Are you kidding me? Like are you kidding? Like, what do you mean I can't accept that?" And he said, "Well, all your peers are going over as senior vice presidents. So you need to tell them you want to be senior vice president. And oh, by the way, you don't make as much as the guy who's in that job right now. So you might want to look at that too." And I was like, I was scared to death. I was like, how do I do this? And then I thought, I coach women on how to do this all the time. Like drink my own champagne. And I did, and I went back to them and I said, "Thank you for your offer of vice president. It will not be acceptable to me at this time." I was very nice, very nice. And I said, "Here's what I expect," and I got it. Like it's one of those things where and it's crazy because I told my sister the story and she said, "You've been telling Dahlia since she was 3 years old, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate, and you forgot that?" And I said, "Yeah, well, it applies to me. I forgot it." But you don't. You get what you negotiate. You don't get what you deserve, and we should negotiate for ourselves.
So, two last questions for you.
We need to get on the stage.
Yes, we do. First question, are there any other books you'd recommend? I know you're an avid reader.
I am an avid reader, and there's all these new books, and every year new books come out. But really, the books I love are some of these older books. Lean In is old, but if you haven't read it, well, go to Half Price Books and get it. It's a great book. Every time I'm either promoted or I get a different job or one of these companies buys us or something like that, I go back to another book called The First 90 Days. And if you haven't read that book is like a guidebook on what do you do in those first 3 months that are so critical for a leader in a new position. They're so important on how do you negotiate, what do you negotiate with your new boss, what are the key steps that you need to take, what are the basic things you need to do. So excellent guidebook. First 90 days, Lean In, make sure you get your Lean In. And then there's another one called, I hate the title of this book, but it's a really great book. It's called Nice Girls Don't Dare to Corner Office. And I really hate the title, but what I love about it is there's a quiz in the front of the book. And every few years or so, I go back and I take that quiz because you change. You should change. If you're not changing, we have a problem. You change every few years. So I go back and I take the quiz. And in the book, it focuses on the 101 things that women do to sabotage their own careers. And I was doing so many things. You can't pick like 100 things that you're going to work on. But every year, my 18-month plan, on that pencil plan, in my 18-month plan, I pick one thing out of the 101 things that I'm going to work on for the next 18 months. And I've really broken a lot of bad habits just by going through that exercise and going back to those 3 books.
Self-awareness is very, very important.
It is.
Yeah. Any final thoughts for us?
We've covered so much ground, and we'd probably stay here all afternoon if you'd let us. So, I would say it comes down to choice, and it comes down to society and ourselves, embracing and giving ourselves those choices. And I would say, as a mother of a 17-year-old boy and a 15-year-old daughter, it's incumbent upon me and it's incumbent upon us to create a society that if my son chooses to stay home with his children and do the important work of child rearing, and if my daughter chooses to lead a company or maybe even a country one day, that both of them both my son and my daughter will be respected, that they'll be celebrated, and that they'll be liked for the choices that they make.
Everyone, please give a round of applause.